Good afternoon, everybody. It's Tuesday, July 26th, and if you're here in Arizona in Phoenix, there's a really good chance that at some point this summer you're going to take the drive north on I-17 up to Flagstaff to get out of this heat. If you do that, somewhere around Anthem, if you look to the west, you're going to see an absolutely massive construction project. That is Taiwan Semiconductor's fab plant that they're building right here in the state of Arizona. It's a $12 billion project. It's going to employ a ton of people, both directly and also for all the businesses that are going to pop up to support that plant. And it's a really big deal for the state of Arizona. Also, Intel building 2 new fab plants in Arizona. So the point is semiconductors are a big deal for the state of Arizona, which means whenever any kind of legislation is going to pass or looks like on the federal level is going to impact that business, it kind of perks me up a little bit because I want to know a little bit more about it. So we've just gotten, the Senate has passed the Creating Helpful Incentives to Produce Semiconductors for America. You got to love the acronym, people in DC, or the CHIPS Act. And what this is basically going to do is this is going to create subsidies, tax credits, other incentives for domestic manufacture of semiconductors. What's kind of interesting about this is you actually had Bernie Sanders vote against it. He viewed it as corporate welfare, basically for very profitable, very wealthy companies. And you had a lot of very conservative Republicans vote against it for kind of the same reasons. So it's always kind of interesting when you see Bernie Sanders and then Tea Party, very right-wing Republicans that get on the same page of things. So, my question is it good? What's it going to do? How's it going to impact the state of Arizona? I will start by saying that both of our senators here, Kyrsten Sinema, I believe, was one of the co-authors of it. If she's not a co-author, she had a big hand in it. Mark Kelly, our other senator, they both hugely in favor of it. They say it's a national security issue. It's great for bringing production back here to the United States. So they're in favor of it. So why are we doing this thing? First of all, it's about a $50+ billion, again, slush fund for the business. So why are we doing it? The thinking is obviously when COVID hit, big supply chain shortages, a lot of it directly involved around semiconductors. We need them for our refrigerators, televisions, cars, pretty much everything. Obviously, we know the automobile industry has been really impacted by not getting the semiconductors that they need. Back in 1990 in the United States, almost 40% of the semiconductors in the world were basically produced here in the United States. We're down to about 12% right now. So we've definitely lost some of that production capacity. Now the U.S. still, by far, no one actually touches us in terms of R&D, in terms of chip design, in terms of really the leading edge of developing those technologies. No one can touch us with that. But a lot of the production of the exosilicon itself is happening over in South Korea and really Taiwan. Taiwan's got a massive footprint in that space. So what you're seeing right now is you're seeing a lot of our political leaders, industry leaders are saying it's a national security risk. Obviously, we need these chips in our defense systems. We need these chips to feed our industry, and they want to bring that production home. That is, in theory anyway, what the CHIPS Act is supposed to do. My only question is this, and I'd be really curious, any listeners that might be, we've got NXP here in the Valley, Microchip Technologies in the Valley, Intel, obviously Taiwan Semiconductor, big giant investment here in the Valley. I would love to know what you all have to think about this, because I'm looking at it, I think that the biggest discussion that everyone that I know or business leaders that I'm speaking with that are trying to outsource any of their production, whether it's steel, whether it's semiconductors, whether it's any kind of manufacturing even overseas, what COVID taught us and what Russia-Ukraine has taught us, that as these supply chains get spread out too thin, it does create risk. And I think the resiliency of supply chains has become the major issue. And so what that means is the private sector's actually been solving that on their own. I'm looking here at my other screen. Before the CHIPS Act, before the federal government got involved in this, you basically had $80 billion worth of projects that were announced here through 2024 in the United States to bring production back to the United States without the federal government getting involved. You have Texas Instruments doing massive investments to produce in the state of Texas. Taiwan Semi I've mentioned about multiple times now here in Arizona, big deal. Samsung's talking about massive projects again to build semiconductors in the state of Texas. Intel obviously expanding their footprint, which is already massive, but expanding their footprint here in Arizona. So these are things that happened already just based on market forces, people looking at their supply chains, looking at how they can strengthen them, how they can bring that production home. And I think you were seeing that happen anyway prior to this piece of legislation. So was it necessary? I don't know. It kind of concerns me a little bit in a world where we've got, we're at 9% inflation, which hopefully is going to come in soon. We've got $30 trillion worth of debt. Was it really necessary for the federal government to drop at least another 50? If they say it's going to cost 50, you know it's going to cost more at a problem that looks like the private sector is solving itself. I don't know the answer to that. It's just something that's important to the state of Arizona. So if anybody on particularly LinkedIn, that's where most of these videos that I do get the most views. If you're with any of these semiconductor companies, you're here in Arizona, you're not here in Arizona, if you have thoughts on this, I'd love to be educated on this because I don't know exactly what I think about this bill. I want stuff that's going to create businesses. I want stuff that's going to create production. Particularly, I think all the stuff that's happening in the state of Arizona is really, really exciting. Anything that supports that, generally speaking, I'm in favor of. But I want to know what you have to think. Chips, is it a good thing? Is it going to help the state of Arizona? Any of you that might possibly watch this that are in this space, in this industry, please educate me on what the possible impacts of this legislation might be. But even without it, it's been really, really incredible to see this return home of a lot of our supply chain, particularly around something as important as semiconductors. So if you stay with me now for 6 minutes and listen to me, thanks again. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. Tell me what you think. Take care.